Hey, welcome to Restoration. My name is Matt. So glad you could join us as we continue our very long series, The Blood Brothers, the story of the sons of Jacob. Months ago, in the first message of the series, we started with the road from Jerusalem to Emmaus. And two of Yeshua's disciples are walking 7 miles, and it's Passover still, 3 days after Yeshua died. The feast is not over. They're walking, talking, and processing everything they witnessed: the trial, the cross, the sealed tomb, the women who came back that morning saying he was alive. And a stranger falls into step beside them, and they don't recognize him, and he asks them what they're talking about. And so they tell him everything in Luke 24 and verse 27. Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them the things written about himself in all the scriptures. So he opened the whole Bible and he showed them this is what it was all pointing to. The whole story has a destination, and that destination is him. We started there in Sermon 1 because this is the claim kind of this entire series is built on. This is one story moving in one direction, and Yeshua himself said on that road, "I am what this story is about." You remember back, again, probably a few months ago, in Genesis 44, Judah stepped forward before the Lord of Egypt and offered himself in place of his brother Benjamin. And Joseph could not hold himself together, and the hidden one was finally revealed. And in the narrative and in the series, that kind of felt like the climax. And at some point, in some ways it was. But what we've been waiting for is actually this moment. Jacob gathering all 12 of his sons, not divided, but together, and speaking over each one of them what will happen in the days to come after he dies. Today's message is part 27 of our series, and it's called Back Towards the Future. It all comes down to what Jacob speaks over his fourth son, Judah. Why not Reuben, the firstborn? Why not Joseph, the beloved? Why Judah? Well, we've talked about this in the series. You can't understand that anything Yeshua says or does without knowing the answer to that question. Fulfilled prophecy matters. Specific text, specific moments that the prophets named centuries before they happened. But the Hebrew poetry, like this chapter of Genesis, does something different than a checklist. It establishes a pattern. It's a family story that runs from generation to generation until the one who fully inhabits it finally arrives. Genesis 49 is not predictions that Yeshua checks off, boxes he hits. It's the shape of the story that he was born into as the son of Judah, as the heir of David, as the one to whom the throne truly belongs. The New Testament doesn't stand on its own. It's the next chapter of the story. It's the same family, the same promise moving forward. My dad would always say that reading the New Testament without the Torah is like learning trigonometry without algebra. You might follow some of it, but when you're missing the foundation, you miss most of what's built on it. Or worse, you start making things up that the original authors never put there. This is the foundation. Genesis 49 is part of what Yeshua was pointing to on the road to Emmaus. This is some of what those two disciples heard and could not yet see until the matzah broke and their eyes were opened and they saw him. So we begin today in Genesis 49 and verse 1. It says, Jacob called his sons and said to them, "Gather together so that I can tell you what will happen to you in the last days." The Hebrew for gather yourselves is hesafu. It comes from the root asaph, to gather, to collect, to be brought together. It's interesting because at the end of the chapter, in verse 33, you find the same root again. He gathered, where Jacob dies, he's gathered to his people. He calls his sons to be gathered around him to start the poetry, and at the end of this chapter, he's gathered home. The word that opens the poem is the word that closes his life. And then there's these important words, the last days, acharit hayamim. It appears for the first time anywhere in the Bible here, before Jacob's poem. And Jacob speaks it first. The TLV translated as the last days, but the root word is ahar, which is behind or after. These are really the after days, not the last days. The days that are still behind you, coming up at your back that you cannot see. Most of us hear the phrase or the scriptures that say last days or end of days. We think immediately about tribulation charts and rapture timelines and the end of the world. But this is the frame that left behind and hundreds of years, just 100 years of American prophecy culture handed us. But that is not what this phrase means. And if we bring that frame to Jacob's deathbed in Egypt, we're going to miss everything that he's saying. Every time Acharit Hayamim runs through the Hebrew Bible, it points towards the same horizon. Or you could say the days, what it actually means is the days of Messiah. There's Aramaic translations called Targums in the 1st century that were already reading it this way. This is not a later Christian reading. It was already inside the Jewish world that Yeshua and his disciples inhabited. The last days were understood as the days of Messiah. And that's why today's message is called Back Towards the Future. Because here's the picture, and it's the opposite of how we think in our culture today. We look ahead to the future. We look forward to the future, and our past is behind us, receding like my hairline, and done. But the Hebrew imagination runs in the other direction. They said that the past was in front of you because it's visible and it's known. And there's a track record of God that you can see with your own eyes. And the future is behind you. It's coming up at your back. You can't see it because you don't have eyes in the back of your head. So like your mom used to say, it all belongs to God. We can't see it. So you do not march confidently forward into what you cannot see. You fix your eyes on the one who is in front of you, the God whose faithfulness is on full display in everything he has already done. That's why you should read your Bibles and understand the story. You trust him with what's behind you because of what you know is in front of you. Now, Jacob wrestled God face to face at the Jabbok and walked away with a limp and a new name. And the one he wrestled in the dark by the river, what we would say is the physical image of the invisible God, has shown him what is coming up behind him, his future. He can see far enough into the Acharit Hayamim that what comes out of him is not speculation, it's sight. This is why the author of Hebrews in the New Testament opens his letter with the same concept, writing to Jewish people in the Greek world who think this same way. The Greek word eschaton is the Septuagint's rendering of Acharit Hayamim. At Hebrews chapter 1, and verse 1, it says that many times and in many ways, God spoke long ago to the fathers through the prophets. In these last days, he has spoken to us through a son, whom he appointed heir of all things and through whom he created the universe. The writer of Hebrews is not introducing a new idea to Jewish people. He's standing inside what Jacob was pointing to and saying. The after part has arrived. At Shavuot, 50 days after Passover, Peter stands in Jerusalem and says the same thing. He says the Spirit has been poured out, just like Joel prophesied. We are now in the Acharit Hayamim. And this is that. Jacob was pointing forward. The New Testament writers announced the arrival. Look, we're not worried about the Acharit Hayamim being the end of all things, because that's not what it means. We are living in the days of Messiah, the Acharit Hayamim, between his first coming and his second coming. These are the days of Messiah. Genesis 49, verse 2. Jacob says to his sons, be assembled and listen, sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father. It's interesting. It's happened before in these chapters that Jacob uses both his names in the same breath. The sons of Jacob, Bnei Yaakov, and Yisrael Avichem, Israel your father. The man and the covenant name together, he's speaking as the one who lived the whole story. And as the one that God renamed and claimed as his own. His sons are not just his biological children. They are the sons of the covenant name. Both are true and both matter in this moment. And look at the word that shows up twice in this same verse. Listen. These 12 sons, not yet 12 tribes, not yet a nation, and the first thing spoken over them as a gathered whole is shemu, or to hear. The word that will become the heartbeat of Israel's faith, Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel, the word is first spoken by Israel himself to his sons. He's saying Shema in Hebrew. It's not passive listening. It's covenant vocabulary. Hear and respond. Hear and do what I'm saying. It's the posture of a people turning their ear towards the one speaking. Jacob's not asking his sons to pay attention. He's calling them into a covenant moment. What is about to come out of his mouth is not a farewell death speech. God has shown him the Acharit Hayamim, and Israel opens his mouth and speaks what he has been shown. And when he gets to the fourth son, we will see the role that Judah's descendant will play in the larger story of Israel and the nations. Genesis 49, verse 8. Judah, he says, so you are, your brothers will praise you. The word atah, you, is emphatic. After everything Jacob has spoken over his previous sons, he turns to the fourth and he says, you are the one. And the name carries destiny. It said the same root is twice. Yehuda and Yoduka is the name, and the blessing are the same root. Yada, which is to praise, to give thanks, to lift your hands towards God. Judah's name is the same root as Todah, which is thanksgiving. And Leah named him from an act of worship. And Jacob says, you are becoming what your name means. Judah, that means praise. Your brothers will praise you. And it will not stop at the 11. One day, all 12 tribes of Israel will bow before the one who comes from Judah's line. Look at the end of this same verse. He says, your father's sons will bow down to you. We all remember Joseph's two dreams, right? His father's sons bowing before him. The dream that set this entire story in motion and made his brothers hate him. Jacob deliberately takes the language of Joseph's story and places it on Judah's future. What Joseph lived in his lifetime, we're going to talk about Joseph next week, his blessing. Judah's seed will fulfill in the Acharit Hayamim. Joseph was the model. Judah's descendant will be the reality. Verse 9, he says, a lion's cub is from Judah. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He crouches and lies down like a lion or like a lioness who would rouse him. The lion image for Judah is born right here in this verse. The ancient world gave the lion image to kings, military dominance, unquestioned authority, the kind of power that does not need to announce itself because everyone already knows. And he's a mature lion. He's crouching and lying down after the kill at rest. And there's something hidden in the word for prey in Hebrew. The word prey is teref. It's from the prey, my son, you have gone up. It's the same root as terof, which is torn to shreds. What the brothers said to Jacob when they brought him Joseph's coat soaked in blood. The beloved son, Joseph, was treated as prey, and Judah was responsible. And here Judah's descendant rises from the prey. What was done to Joseph, because the image of what Judah's lion reverses. Verse 10, it says, the scepter will not pass from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet. The word in Hebrew for scepter is shevet. It's a wooden staff that embodies authority, military power, judicial authority, like the shepherd's rod. And shepherd in the Hebrew Bible is the most common image for a king. The scepter will not depart from Judah. The line is going to hold through David and Solomon, through the divided kingdom and exile. The scepter does not leave Judah's line until the one to whom it belongs arrives and claims it. And then the word for ruler's staff is literally one who carves decrees, legislative authority, the one who establishes order by enacting law. With the scepter and the staff together, you have a complete picture of royal power, the military authority and the legislative authority, both together in Judah's line. And then comes the word that has been debated what it really means for centuries. Verse 10, the next part of verse 10, it says, until he to whom it belongs will come. And for me, the reading that fits the grammar and the context of this sentence is Shiloh, which is tribute to him, or simply to whom it belongs. The scepter will not depart from Judah until the one to whom it truly belongs comes and claims it. And as I already said, the Aramaic translations from the first century that are circulating around Jewish communities already read it this way because they read the last days as until the Messiah comes. So it could actually say until the Messiah comes to whom belongs the kingdom. This is why when Yeshua walks into Galilee and says the kingdom of heaven is at hand, his first century Jewish audience understood exactly what he was claiming. The one to whom the scepter belongs has arrived. And the Messiah will unite the 12 tribes of Israel. And under his rule, the rest of verse 10 says, to him will be the obedience of the Amim, of the peoples. It's not just the 12 tribes of Israel, but all peoples, Amim. It's the dominion of the one to whom the scepter belongs is universal. This is Abrahamic promise. Through your seed, all the families of the earth will be blessed. That promise ran through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and through Judah. And here Jacob names which son carries it forward to its ultimate fulfillment. Not just a king over Israel, a king over Amim, a king over all the peoples. Genesis 49, 11 and 12, it says that binding his foal to the vine, his donkey's colt to the choice vine, he washes his garments in wine, and in blood of grapes his robe, his eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth are whiter than milk. Hebrew poetry is a bit like a riddle. And this is what the world will look like when the rightful king arrives. It'll be wine so abundant that you tie your donkey to the vine. And it doesn't matter if he eats or not because there'll be more than enough. It'll be so plentiful that you'll wash your clothes in wine the way other people use water. Abraham ibn Ezra explained it simply this way. He said, the vineyards will be so productive that the owner will not care if the animal eats the grapes. The extravagance of the image is the point. This is not modest sufficiency. This is not daily bread. This is Eden overflowing. It's the ground producing beyond what anyone needs. The curse reversed. The blessing of Genesis 1 flowing through the line of Judah to fill the earth with what God has always intended it to hold. Jacob moves through his sons and he keeps blessing each of his sons. Some sound like curses. And he comes to Dan. And Dan will be the judge of his people as one of the tribes of Israel. And then Jacob gives his son Dan this image in verse 17. He says, let Dan be a serpent beside a road, a viper beside a path, who strikes a horse's heel so that its riders fall backwards. But if you know some of the story of Genesis, you pay attention to the narrative, you see the word Nachash and the word Akev. Nachash is serpent and Akev is heel. And Nachash is the serpent in the garden and Akev is the heel that's talked about the serpent biting in Genesis 3 verse 15. He will crush your head and you will crush his heel. Jacob is not just describing a tribe's military strategy. He's reaching back to the garden. The serpent and the heel are in this poem, even if it doesn't sound like what the story actually sounds like in Genesis 3. And then Jacob just stops. He's blessing his sons. He goes through 4 and then 5 and into Dan. And before he gets to Gad, he just stops. And he just spoke about the serpent and the heel. And this next sentence, verse 18, just seems to break out of him in praise. For your salvation I wait, Adonai. This is Yeshua cha kiviti Adonai. For your salvation I wait, O Lord. Jacob is not interrupting his poem. He's responding to it. He's getting information from what the Lord is letting him see that's behind him. And he's seen far enough into the Acharei Hayamim that the praise just breaks out of him. Not to his sons, but to the Lord. And he uses the word Yeshua in the name that will one day be given to a baby boy born in Bethlehem, in the tribe of Judah, in the line of David. And his name is Yeshua because the angel said he will save his people. Salvation. Jacob cries out the name without knowing that he's crying out the name. He saw so far enough into the Acharei Hayamim to know that salvation was coming. And in the middle of the poem, he breaks and he says, for your salvation I wait, O Lord. Can I get an amen? Amen. Next week, we're going to finish the remaining sons, focusing on Joseph. And at the end of all of the 12 sons, when Jacob finishes blessing all 12, the author says something that has never been said anywhere in the Bible before this moment. Verse 28, these are the tribes of Israel, 12 in all. The word for tribe here is shivtei. It actually means branches. There's another word for tribe. It's not used here. The author uses shevet, the same word Jacob used in verse 10 for the scepter. The king and his people are connected at the root. The scepter is shevet. The tribes are branches of the scepter. And the image of Judah as a lion, as a royal lion, will run through the entire Hebrew Bible. But do you know that the exact title, the Lion of Judah, only appears once in the whole Bible, in one place? It's in Revelation chapter 5. And I saw in the right hand of the one seated upon the throne a scroll written on both the front and the back, sealed with 7 seals. And I also saw a mighty angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the scroll and to break its seals? No one in heaven or on earth or under heaven was able to open the scroll or look into it. And so I began, John says, I began to weep loudly because no one was found worthy to open the scroll or look into it. Then one of the elders tells me, stop weeping. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has triumphed. He is worthy to open the scroll and its 7 seals. John is weeping because there's no one to do what needs to be done, and no one in heaven or on earth is worthy. And one of the elders stops him and says, dude, stop crying. Look, the Lion of Judah, the root of David, he's triumphed. Well, these are 2 important titles that both reach back into the Torah and the prophets, right? The Lion of the tribe of Judah comes from this poem in Genesis 49. The lion who crouches after the prey, who lies down with whom no one dares to rouse. The root of David reaches back to Isaiah 11. There's a stump of Jesse because it's been cut down and the line looks like it's finished. And Isaiah looked ahead. He looked behind. And he said, what comes from this root will outlast everything that tries to cut it down. So the elder in the vision of Revelation is holding Genesis 49 in one hand and Isaiah 11 in the other. And the elder says, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So John turns to look, but what he sees is not a lion. Verse 6. And in the midst of the throne and the four living creatures, and in the midst of the elders, I saw a lamb standing as having been slain. A lamb standing in the midst of the throne, as if he's slaughtered. The wounds are still visible. He went all the way through death and came out the other side, but the marks of death are still on him because the lion is the lamb. The triumph is the wound. Friends, we're living between two moments. In his first coming, Yeshua came as the Passover lamb. He offered himself. He went all the way through to death, and he rose from the dead. And in his return, he will come as the Lion of Judah. He will defeat his enemies. He will establish his kingdom. He will reign forever. Both are true, and both are in Revelation, the end. But right now, in the Acharit Hayamim, we're living between those two moments. The one on the throne is still the Lamb who was slain, and his return is still behind us, coming up at our backs, unseen, because it's held by God. And friends, we need to look back towards the future. Growing up in charismatic and Pentecostal circles, Jewish charismatic Pentecostal circles, I know that's weird, the Lion of Judah was talked about as a warrior king, this power, conquest, defeat of the enemies. And in recent years, I've seen that image picked up by many American Christians and other Messianic Jews, and tied that the Lion of Judah gets tied to the idea of holy wars and political dominance. But the text just showed us something different. And it's worth saying that in the first century, many Jewish people were expecting exactly that warrior king. A Messiah who would destroy Rome and liberate Israel and establish the kingdom by force. It's not hard to understand why. Occupation will do that to a people. And when Yeshua showed up, he did not do that. Many concluded, because he didn't do it, many concluded that he could not be the Messiah. And some Jewish people still make that objection today. But the expectation of a purely military Messiah is not actually rooted in the text of the scriptures. It's pulling from many different places, and it misses something that the whole story has been showing us since Judah offered himself in place of his brother. Yeshua did not come the first time as the Lion of Judah, at least not yet. Everything he did pointed towards self-offering before conquest. He refused the crowd when they tried to make him king by force. He told Pilate his kingdom was not of this world. He said the Son of Man came not to be served, but to give life as a ransom. It's first the Passover lamb, then the Lion of Judah. That's the order. He's both at the same time, but there's still an order. Which means you and I have to be very careful about what we attribute to him. Every generation since the first century has had wars and earthquakes and plagues. And Yeshua himself said, when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, see that you are not alarmed. These are not signals that the end of the world is coming. We have been in the days of Messiah for 2,000 years. The Lion of Judah, this is so important. The Lion of Judah is not a symbol to put over geopolitical conflicts. He's the king of Amim, all people. Israel first, the Jewish people first, but all nations. His return is in God's hand, not ours. We cannot force it. And friends, I'll tell you, I read so many things this week about how versions of Christian theology tell us we can force him to come. Here's how we get him to come back. And Orthodox Jewish theology is here's how we get the Messiah to come. But Messiah coming is not dependent on us. We cannot read it in the news cycles. We can't read it into the news cycles. And we cannot and should not weaponize his image for political purposes. The days of Messiah have begun. They're not the end of the world. They're the age that Jacob was pointing to. And here's what it means for how we stand. It's so different than the way that we think. It's hard to shift our brains because it's backwards. The way ancient Israelites thought is backwards from us. The past is in front of us because you can see it. You can see the Exodus, the covenant, the fathers, the cross, the empty tomb, the outpouring of the Spirit at Shavuot. All of it's visible. It's in front of our faces. We read the stories. We know what happened. It's a track record of God who has never once failed to do what he said he would do. And the future is behind us because we can't see it. We do not know the day or the hour, but we're not asked to see it. We're told to fix our eyes on Yeshua, the author and finisher of our faith, eyes on him, face towards everything he has already done. What is behind us, what we cannot see, that belongs entirely to him. When you find yourselves in situations where you've got nothing left and you don't know what to do, the first thing we say is, I don't know what to do. But you do. You know where to be faithful and what to do. You know how to work hard. You know how to do all the things that you can do while somehow holding that our lives are not dependent on what we do. Look, Yeshua's coming back. The lion who is the lamb, the root of David, the one Jacob saw from his deathbed in Egypt, he's still coming. And when he comes, the world will look like what Jacob spoke over Judah. It'll be wine like water and Eden overflowing and more than enough and the curse reversed and every people and every tribe and every nation, the Amim, gathered under the one to whom it all belongs. We are the people living in the Acharit Hayamim. The after days are behind us. They're unseen, held by him. And we move forward with our faces towards everything God has already done. Through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, David, through the stump of Jesse, through a manger in Bethlehem, through a cross outside of Jerusalem, through an empty tomb, through a lamb standing in the throne room of heaven as if he slaughtered. Because Yeshua came, and he will return. And the scepter has not departed from Judah. I love you guys, and next week, we're going to focus on the blessing of Joseph, and man, I hope you come back for it, because it's the best.